And I guess at this stage, it's better to be well thought of than not thought of. Poor Washington has beaten a top 10 team with Oregon, and they're ranked below a couple of teams, Georgia and Michigan, who haven't done anything close to that. I don't think either of them have. Do either of them even have a win over a ranked opponent?
No.
I'm not even sure. I think Georgia's playing one is it this week with Missouri?
Yes.
So they get their first crack at one this week. Michigan won't play one until November the 11th. Isn't that right? So next Saturday they play Penn State on the road. They'll finally get one. So those teams, we're going to find out a lot more about what those teams have to offer when they play those better opponents in the weeks ahead. I think we already know what Ohio State's all about. Great defense, decent enough offense, cruddy special teams. I'm just joking, everybody. Parker Fleming's mom, I'm just joking. But I think that there's a lot there that Ohio State has shown, and I think that not everything is rooted in the fact that you can go out and score 45 points. It's more in terms of, can you win in a game that's a talent equated game. Ohio State's done that twice, and nobody else really at this level has done that yet. So to me, it's a starting point, and it's obviously the most important thing is where you are in the poll after the Big Ten championship game. If you're in the top 4, then the dream lives on. If you're not, then get ready to go play in some second-tier bowl game.
They had the best resume, so it was just interesting to see whether they would side with the resume or their preferred opinions initially. But I think early on, it's best to side with the resume and then allow everything else to catch up, because Georgia is going to start playing some ranked teams for like 3 of the next 4 weeks. They'll finish with some ranked teams and be able to climb back to number 1 or wherever they need to be. But just after the ranking reveal last night, I went through and looked to see who the initial number 1 teams were every year. And only 2 of the 9 years has the number 1 ranked team not made the playoffs. So, what's that? A 78% chance to make the playoffs based on being number 1. And the initial rankings, the only 2 who didn't were Tennessee last year and Mississippi State the first year.
And that 78 coincides with what ESPN put up on the screen with their FPI and the percentage chance Ohio State has to make the playoff. And I take that you never want to envision this scenario, but even if they were to lose to Michigan, there is still an outside chance based on so many other games that have to be played with these contenders. With them possibly losing games, Ohio State could backdoor their way into this thing just like they did last year if some of these other top contenders take a second loss, or if Florida State and Washington also lose and don't win their conference championships, then the door is wide open, I think, for a 1-loss Ohio State team to get back in there. Because, again, by that point of the season, Ohio State's still going to have 3 very good wins with, I'm counting Wisconsin, who I think is going to end up 9-3 if their quarterback play holds up. They don't really play anybody here down the stretch. So they've got a chance to go 9-3. So, and then Penn State probably end up 10-2. I don't know, even at home, I envision them beating Michigan. And Notre Dame probably end up 10-2, 9-3. I don't know what all. I know they have to go to Clemson, and they've already beaten USC. So they've done most of their heavy lifting.
The top 5 line up fairly well, although Steve makes a great point with Washington. I think the committee is taking into consideration Washington's recent struggles, which have been pretty mighty. And then, of course, that Oregon game, the credit should go to the winner. And then, of course, the loser has to take the hit. I think there's an evaluation of how that landed. It was basically a coin flip of a game in Seattle.
And that's similar to Ohio State's win over Notre Dame, although that was on the road at Notre Dame. I think Ohio State deserves some credit for that. Washington plays 3 ranked teams the next 3 weeks and then plays their rival, Washington State, who's not ranked but is more than capable of beating them on a perfect day. I mean, they've won some good games already this year themselves. So I mean, they don't have it easy by any stretch of the imagination here down the stretch. And then even if they do survive, probably a rematch with Oregon, who would be, hell bent, obviously, to win that game. I believe it's in Las Vegas on a neutral field. So, I mean, everybody's got their work cut out for them. Florida State may have, what do they have left? Florida and probably Louisville in the ACC championship. And I don't know what other tomato cans they still have to play in the ACC. But yeah, it looks pretty much like a cakewalk for them to get maybe even 13-0.
Virginia's
in Louisville.
playing. Yeah, go ahead,
Louisville
Tony.
and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech and Louisville both have one loss in the ACC, and they play this week. So if Virginia Tech somehow gets that win, that would be it's going to be an easy road. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty easy road, except for that Louisville game and the conference championship game. But on the conference call with Boo Corrigan, the committee chair last night, he said it was the last two games for Washington, which put them fifth. Basically, that was the offensive touchdownless performance against Arizona State and lackluster looking a game against Stanford, but they'll be able to pick it back up the next 4 weeks. I still think Oregon on a neutral field or even in Washington again would probably be favored over Washington the way they're playing right now. And I expect Oregon to eventually come out of the Pac-12. Although I'm still not going to be shocked if nobody comes out of there with less than 2 losses or something like that. Because Washington does have a schedule with their last 4 and then a conference championship game where they could still lose 2 of their next 5 games pretty easily.
Yeah, you look at that Pac-12, it's different than the other conferences, and I've got to credit because I've piled on it for 5 or 6 years because it's been awful up until last year. But the other conferences, you can circle that game, that game, that game. There's about 3 games on average between the other conferences. But that Pac-12, there's about 3 games every week between those 5 teams that can go either way. And there's just too many possibilities out there to really hone in on it right now. Of course, a lot's going to be decided this week with a couple of those meaningful games in the Pac-12. Guys, I actually thought that the 1-loss placing of these teams was more telling in a sense in regards to, okay, what are they going to do with Oregon versus Alabama, Texas, and on down the line. Penn State drops all the way to 11. Just anything there that jumps out or in any of the rest of the rankings?
Well, Texas is ahead of Oklahoma, who Oklahoma beat them. Of course, Texas is also ahead of Alabama, who Texas defeated. I don't know how you line up those 3. Oklahoma has the worst loss of those 3, losing to Kansas, although it was on the road and was on the last play of the game or whatever, or near last play of the game or final minute or whatever. That was a crazy ending to that game. We were watching it, and it just seemed to go on and on and on. We're trying to get leave to go to the stadium before the game the other night. It's like, will this game ever end? So poor Oklahoma, though. I mean, they were having a really good year, and these games. This is why it's so hard to go 12-0. I mean, we talk about parity in the Big Ten and in these major conferences. I mean, you can be having a great season and just one bad week just derails the whole thing. If Wisconsin had any kind of an offense to make Ohio State pay for the turnovers that they had in the game last week, that game could have ended up a defeat for Ohio State. But at no point, Tony, you were there, did I ever get the sense, even when Wisconsin tied it in the third quarter, that Wisconsin was ever going to win that game. Not at any moment.
No, and similar to the Penn State game that I compared to the 2007 Michigan game where Michigan had no offense. Chad Henne was all banged up, couldn't throw the ball. There's very little threat, and it would have taken a big play to happen, and it's something that Ohio State has not given up this year, so that led to that stuff not happening. But, Mark, to your earlier point, I'm with you in terms of the one-loss team because you can see the committee likes the Pac-12 when you've got Oregon State at 16, Utah, UCLA, USC all in a row, 18, 19, 20 in there. allowing Oregon and Washington to get some quality wins. And I was surprised that Alabama being where they were a little bit. But in terms of the Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma thing, once you get that loss to somebody that is not in that round robin, then you're out. Like if Washington loses to any of these teams, Oregon's going to jump them regardless of the head-to-head. We've seen the committee gets very selective when they choose to use head-to-head, and they only choose to use it when the team that won is the team that they like better. And they're like, yeah, head-to-head matters. When it doesn't matter is when they believe the better team lost, and then you can point at, well, Oklahoma lost to Kansas, and that's the biggest factor in this. And that's why the committee even said that's why they were behind Texas and Alabama in this one.
For anybody that doesn't do rankings, it's easy to say honor the head-to-head because I'm fully on board with that. Honor the head-to-head.
When you can.
That Ohio State-Oregon situation from 2 years ago is a perfect example. I tried to do my best to honor head-to-head. Oregon won the game, and then even after Oregon loses, it's still a tie record situation to honor the head-to-head. But Oregon was just playing atrocious teams week after week and playing bad football, barely winning, and it creates this logjam of other worthy teams that actually should be ahead of Oregon. But if you're staying with that head-to-head exclusively, then it just becomes difficult to be fair to everyone else.